Shepard's squad had just finished dealing with another group of drones and some kind of special drone that was stronger, tougher, and deadlier than its counterparts. The Spectre was actually a little worried about the other squads running into another one of those. It had taken heavy weapons to break through that thing's armor, and Miranda's squad didn't have much of that. Revan would probably be fine, but Shepard was worried that the others on her squad would run into the new drone before the Sith could kill it. "Hey, Shep. Check it out, that door still has power and it's locked down." Kasumi pointed at a mechanical building that hadn't been left open by the collectors. Shepard followed the thief's finger to a large building that, just as she said, was locked down tight despite the drones leaving every building they had come across so far completely open. Was this similar to what happened with Vita on Freedom's Progress? Or had the collectors not gotten around to it yet? "What do you think, Kasumi? Can you break it?" The petite woman scoffed. "A standard lock on a remote colony? Shepard, I'm insulted. I thought you had more faith in me than that." Shepard fought down a smile. "Yeah? Then why is it still closed?" She and Garrus chuckled as the thief started mumbling to herself while she started hacking the door controls. Unsubtle complaints about ungrateful bosses and demands for a vacation reached both of them, perfectly pitched so that both of them could hear them, but not so loud that it might draw attention. Even when playing around, Kasumi was a professional. Barely 15 seconds later, the fireteam was through the door and carefully moving through the building. Just because one door was locked didn't mean another one hadn't been opened. A shadow moved on the far side of the room. "Company." Shepard warned her teammates and pointed at where she saw the movement. Guns were raised, Garrus and Kasumi looked for more hidden threats, and Shepard took a couple steps forward. "Get out here. Now," she ordered. The shadow moved hesitantly before an older man in mechanic's clothes and a baseball hat inched out from behind some machinery and got a look at Shepard's team. You're human. What are you doing out here?" The mechanic looked at the now open door and a panicked look broke out on his face. "You'll lead them right here." Shepard looked at the man with slight disdain. The entire colony had been attacked. Hiding in one room wasn't a guarantee the collectors wouldn't check here eventually, especially since a squad of them had been right outside a few minutes ago. She wasn't going to expect every person to throw personal safety out the window, but instantly blaming others who could be looking for a safe place themselves was cowardly. It also didn't say great things about what the mechanic was doing considering no one else was in here and he had been hiding in a corner even before they walked in. "We cleared a path right through them. You're lucky you're not in the hold of a collector ship right now." "Those things are collectors? You mean, they're real?" the man asked with a tone of utter disbelief. "I thought they were just made up. You know, propaganda. To keep us in Alliance space." He began to shake. "No. They got Lilith. I saw her go down. Sten, too. They got damn near everybody." Shepard wasn't unsympathetic to the man. He looked like the kind of person that hadn't really done much with his life and left to join a small colony to get out from under the more structured regulations enforced by the Alliance. He was clearly a civilian through and likely hadn't ever been in a situation more dangerous than a bar fight in his life. The situation was clearly overwhelming him. "What's your name? What are you doing here?" she asked gently, trying to calm him down. "Name's Delon. Mechanic. I came down here to check on the main grid after we lost our comm signals. Then I heard screaming." Delon started to calm down slightly as he talked. "I looked outside and there was swarms of bugs. Everyone they touched just froze. I sealed the doors." The guilt in his voice told Shepard he probably closed the doors in the faces of some of the colonists. "Damn it, it's the Alliance's fault. They stationed that Chief Williams here and built those defense towers. It made us a target." This guy was a piece of work. It was Shepard's fault he was in danger. It was the Alliance's fault the collectors had attacked. He probably was going to blame the colonists for something else once the dust settled. It was always because of someone else and never his fault or because of random chance. We've confirmed over half a dozen colonies have been attacked. None of them had any Alliance presence. Shepard snapped. This is not their fault. Dellen flinched back but didn't apologize. This is just a small colony. No one bothered us before we started building defense towers and drew attention to ourselves. I left Council space to get away from the Alliance. Nothing good comes from getting mixed up with them, he said mulishly. Shepard took a deep breath and slowly released it. Tell me about Chief Williams. What was she doing here? I dunno, all I heard was that she was some kind of hero. Didn't mean nothing to me, though. Would have rather he stayed back in Council space, but she was supposed to be helping us get the defense towers up and running. Dellen said, nervously running a hand up and down his face before removing his hat and running his hand through his thinning hair. I got the feeling she was here for something else though. Spying on us, maybe. Shepard wanted to sigh in exasperation but held it in. Hopefully she could find someone a little less biased later, but something the mechanic said did catch her attention. Defense towers. A gift from the Alliance. High-powered Guardian lasers. Supposed to keep hostile ships from landing too close to the colony. Had to build a massive underground generator just to give them enough juice. Dellen explained. Only we couldn't get targeting systems online. So the Alliance gave us a giant gun that couldn't even shoot straight. Stupid sons of bitches. Shepard ignored him. Those towers could be exactly what they needed to drive the collectors back. If the only thing wrong with them was the targeting systems, she even had the perfect person for the job with her. She turned to Garrus. You think you could get those towers targeting systems running? If they are like the ones on the Normandy, there shouldn't be any issues. Garrus said as he thought it over. We'd need somewhere to calibrate them from, though. Head for the main transmitter on the other side of the colony. Dellen volunteered. Pretty hard to miss and the targeting controls are at the base. Perfect. And if Shepard was remembering the layout of the colony correctly, Miranda's squad should be close by. With some luck they would be able to meet up there. She ordered that Dellen stay behind since she wasn't about to drag an unwilling civilian into a firefight, something he was more than happy to agree to, and set out deeper into the colony. Now that they were past the fringes of the colony, they were running into far more collectors and their forces. Husks were everywhere and there were even a new variant of them as well. Some sort of misshapen mass that while slow, it was also biotic and pretty tough to take down. Shepard was going to have to look into better weapons or upgrades for everyone after this. The stuff they had didn't have enough punch for her liking. And considering the collectors clearly weren't expecting resistance at this stage, that meant bad things in the face of a full invasion since she had already kitted out her teams with some of the best off-the-shelf stuff she could get her hands on. To make matters worse, those enhanced drones kept popping up every once in a while, usually leading another group of enemies like some damn harbinger of a horde. Though after a few run-ins, her team had gotten a pretty good routine on how to handle the glowing bastards. Shepard popped a heatsink and smoothly replaced it after they cut down yet another batch of husks. How we doing? Any sign of Miranda's squad? She called out to her teammates. We got a signal nearby breaking through the jamming. I think they're close. The commander nodded. Then let's get there fast. The sooner we get those defense towers online, the sooner we end this. It didn't take long to catch up with Miranda, Jacob, and Grunt, though it did take a bit to explain what they had learned from the mechanic. Miranda also shared what her team ran into, which turned out to be not much. They hadn't found any signs of the colonists and had only run into a small amount of collectors on their way here. Something Grunt seemed a bit frustrated about. How come we don't see more frozen people around? The young Krogan asked after Shepard explained what Dellen had described happening to the colonists. The collectors likely already loaded them onto their ship. Miranda answered. We are running out of time. But before everyone else is taken went unsaid. About that, We got some more news from our civilian friend. Shepard broke in. Apparently the Alliance has a couple Guardian lasers set up, but we need to fix their targeting systems. Garrus should be able to handle that, but we are probably going to need to route power from a generator he told us about too. Any ideas how we do that? Miranda thought about it for a while before looking at the colony skyline. If the colony's main transmitter is right by the controls, we might be able to contact the Normandy and have Edie piggyback the signal. We could use her to hack the generator controls and power those towers. Downside is that much traffic is going to paint a big target on us. Jacob pointed out. We are going to be crawling in collectors while the guns are powering up. Sounds like fun. Grunt added his thoughts. Am I the only one here who thinks getting the attention of every single bug thing here at once is a bad idea? Kasumi muttered. No? Just me? Fine, let's get this over with so we can get out of here. Don't worry. You'll get used to diving into suicidal situations with Shepard. Eventually it just gets boring. Garrus comforted her. ... I don't know what to say to that. Shepard checked to make sure, but the thief really didn't have too much of an issue with the plan. Kasumi just seemed uncomfortable intentionally making herself a target without it being a distraction where she could slip away later. So what about Revan's squad? Any news on them? Everyone shook their heads. We've been too far away to get a signal through whatever is jamming communications. We might be able to get a message to them when we reach the transmitter, or they might notice all the collectors heading our way. Shepard frowned. 2 of their heaviest hitters were in Revan's squad, so they were probably fine, but things would be much harder without them. Hopefully they weren't too far away to notice when the party started. She wasn't looking forward to trying to deal with an entire colony's worth of drones with just 6 people. Well, we can hope, I guess. In the meantime, let's get this done. Concerningly, the fire team mostly only ran into pockets of husks and the new biotic version Miranda was calling scions. It seemed like all the drones had moved out of the area, which meant they had already cleared out the area of colonists and had left behind the stupider techno-zombies only as a potential trap for anyone coming to investigate later. It did mean that Shepard's expanded team was able to make good time to the plaza where the main transmitter was. Something she was glad for, since the drones seemed like they were reaching the final stages for extracting everyone out of the colony. Garrus, you get started on the targeting calibrations. I'm going to try and raise the Normandy. Everyone else, defensive perimeter. The scarred Turian made his way over to the terminal and immediately went to work correcting the errors in the system. The rest of her team expertly set up so each one of them had overlapping fields of vision and plenty of cover. While they were doing that, Shepard patched into the transmitter and tried calling back to her ship. Normandy? Do you copy? Joker here. Signal's weak, Commander, but we got you. The pilot's voice was tinny but still recognizable. Great, Edie, you think you can get the generator feeding the colony's defense towers online? Firewalls around the generator's controls are easily bypassed, but it will take time to bring the towers to full power. The AA replied. I recommend a defensive posture. I will not be able to mask the increased generator output. Got it. Can you contact Revan's team at all? We could use the help. Negative. The interference coming from the colony is still preventing us from communicating with anyone on the ground. Shepard cursed. Well, keep trying. If we're lucky, they'll show up on their own, but who knows? Affirmative. I will attempt to make contact. I have also bypassed the generator failsafes and am ready to attempt an emergency power-up on your signal. Garrus. How's the targeting systems looking? We aren't going to be bullseyeing fighters anytime soon, but I've got them ready to shoot straight. We're good to go, Shepard. Garrus called back. Shepard joined the rest of her squad and gave a few last-minute orders, but they were about as prepared as they were going to get, and trying to micromanage her team was pointless since any plans they made now would likely need to change in response to the enemy. So Shepard activated her comms and contacted the Normandy again. "Okay, Edie, we're all set down here. Start powering up the generator." "Affirmative, Commander. Generator powering up. Please hold the defense tower." Nothing happened for a while, but eventually the collectors detected the increased power and began to converge on their position. Groups of husks and drones attacked in waves. If they had remained in the standard 3-man squads, things could have gotten really dicey, but with some clever use of cover, combination biotic attacks, and a whole lot of gunfire, they were holding pretty well. Not even the enhanced drones could do much when 2 or 3 of the ground team were free to engage them, while the others focused on the surrounding enemies. Edie kept them all up to date on how the tower's charging rate, and if nothing changed, they would be fully operational in just a few minutes. Naturally, that meant the collectors decided to throw a curveball and fuck everything up. A massive 4-legged armored form fell from the sky and landed in the middle of the Normandy ground team. It immediately burst in a spherical biotic explosion that threw nearly the entire team to the ground. Shepard dragged herself off the ground and got her first good look at the new flying tank-like enemy, and at first she couldn't tell if it was collector tech or something worse. Then the thing opened its mouth, revealing dozens of husk heads all crammed together on the inside and confirming that this new enemy was Reaper tech, despite the primary face looking like a collector head and the main body looking remarkably insect-like. Shepard screamed for everyone to focus fire on the new arrival. Anything with that much battlefield control needed to be taken down fast before it could do another one of those shockwave attacks. They were lucky the first time it did it. The rest of the enemy forces were far enough back to give everyone time to recover. If it did it again and a group of husks or drones were nearby, someone was going to die. "Shepard, do we have any heavy weapons left? We're barely scratching this thing's barrier," Miranda shouted over the sound of gunfire. "We are out. We used the last of it on the last enhanced," Shepard called back. Ammo was actually starting to become a concern. They were able to recycle a couple heatsinks, but several others had warped from the heat of their weapons firing near constantly. Pretty soon they would be reduced to biotics and melee weapons. "Edie, how much longer?" The flying tank focused on Shepard, its eyes glowing electric blue, and fired twin particle beams that chewed through the thin metal barriers the commander had been sheltering behind. She dove to the side, but even that glancing contact was enough to shatter her shields and set a suit warning blaring. "Guardian anti-ship batteries at 100%. I have control." Well, at least there was a tiny bit of good news, Shepard thought, as the now active defenses began to hammer into the distant collector ship. Now they only had to not die to the ground forces and they would win. The insect tank decided Shepard was too mobile and shifted its attention to the rest of her team. It rose through the air and crashed into the ground practically right on top of Grunt as he was dealing with another group of husks. To make matters worse, when it used that biotic burst to knock everyone away, it managed to send a previously invisible Kasumi slamming into a wall. Thankfully, despite being thrown into a pile with a bunch of techno-zombies, Grunt was still perfectly capable of dealing with them as he ripped, tore, and shotgunned his way back to his feet. Kasumi was a bit slower to get up, but Garrus was keeping an eye on her and was picking off anything that focused on the downed thief. Shepard unloaded shot after shot into the insect tank, hoping to take it down, even as she sent blasts of biotic shockwaves into the hordes of husks to trip them up. So much so that she actually lost situational awareness for a second and didn't realize until a lucky husk tackled her from behind. She wrestled with the enhanced strength of the zombie, doing her best to keep it from getting its hands or teeth on her before managing to wrap the damned thing in a lift field and freeing herself. Losing focus was a mistake, potentially her last on, considering the insect tank had noticed her struggle and was preparing to fire its particle weapons again. Time seemed to slow down as adrenaline surged and Shepard tried to come up with a plan to get out of the way. Her gut told her to move forward and Shepard followed that instinct without thought. The powerful blue beams just barely missed the Spectre as she dove closer to the insect tank, but she wasn't safe just yet. She was now close enough that a swinging forelimb caught her in the ribs, breaking shields, armor, and bone at the same time. Shepard was on the verge of blacking out and idly wondered if this was the end for her. Not how she wanted to go out, but at least she was confident her team would keep going without her. The commander could only watch helplessly as the floating creature raised a pointed leg and prepared to impale her. She tried to move, trigger her biotics, anything to get out of the way, but she could do nothing. Her plight didn't go unnoticed by her teammates either, as they all shifted fire in a last-ditch effort to drive the insect tank off. The pointed limb came down and Shepard closed her eyes, expecting a burst of pain. When nothing happened, SH cautiously opened her eyes and saw the insect tank's limb inches from her chest, held in place by an invisible force that it was still struggling against. A relieved sigh exploded from Shepard's lips as she looked past the gathered enemies and saw the last missing ground team making their way into the fight. Jack was ripping through the last of the husk hordes in a biotic rage, Mordin was rapidly assisting anyone injured and falling back into a support role, and Revan was calmly walking through the chaotic battlefield like she was fucking untouchable. Her left hand was clawed and pointed at the insect tank, presumably holding it in place, while her right had her glowing red lightsaber held casually at her side. Any husks unfortunate to get close enough were instantly dismembered with ease, and any drone that tried to focus on the advancing Sith Lord found all of their shots blocked by a wall of light. Hells, the ones with the particle beams found their shots reflected into their companions. The insect tank was slowly pulled away under Revan's telekinetic grasp, despite it trying to escape. Shepard could see its limbs and body straining under the effort to escape, but instead of making progress, it was being slowly crushed as the Sith increased the pressure of her hold. I've seen many examples of Sith alchemy producing twisted creatures such as you, Revan said to the tank. And each time I can think of fewer things that I would enjoy than seeing their perversions wiped from the galaxy. You might not be a product of alchemy, but I think I'm going to enjoy this just the same. Revan closed her fist and the tank shrieked as tortured metal gave way and the creature was warped into a ball of scrapped metal. Finally the creature, after being the focus of several concentrated assaults, died as the Ezo inside of it detonated from the crushing forces of Revan's attack. The death of the insect tank seemed to be the last straw for the collectors. In the distance, the collector ship finally ignited its main engines and launched away from the colony. Shepard watched the fleeing ship with mixed feelings. On the one hand, they had driven off the collectors and protected the colony. On the other hand, the attacking aliens had managed to escape with all of their captives, and there wasn't much she or her team could do about it. Time would tell if this was a victory or just the collectors deciding continuing on simply wasn't worth it. Revan watched as the odd ship escaped into the void of space. Part of her was tempted to see if she could engineer a situation that prevented the collectors from leaving. Outright stopping them would leave her far too burned out to do much else for a while, but a few misaligned engines on the other hand. She shook her head and dismissed the idea. Even if she could do it, there would still be far too many collectors that would survive the crash. The Normandy team could handle quite a few of them with little issue, a few thousand was another matter entirely. Not to mention Shepard would likely prioritize the colonists remaining, meaning their already small force would wind up reduced even more as the commander split off teams to cover attacks from multiple flanks. So in the end the Sith Lord did nothing as the collector ship got away, merely watching with a mix of pity and resignation that the captured colonists would soon be either dead or wishing they were very soon. No. Don't let them get away. One of the remaining colonists cried after the fleeing ship. There's nothing we can do, Shepard said softly. They're gone. She also likely realized that even if she called the Normandy to engage right now, there was no chance they could rescue the captives. Half the colony's in there? The colonist angrily flailed an arm in the direction the ship left. They took Egan and Sam and Lilith. Do something. I didn't want it to end this way. I'm sorry. Don't feel too bad, Shepard. You did the best you could. Garrus offered, brought closer by the yelling, trying to comfort his friend. Revan knew from experience it was an empty platitude, but Shepard seemed to appreciate the gesture. Shepard? Wait. I know that name. Revan idly wondered if there were other members of Shepard's family that were constantly mistaken for her. Did Shepard have a family? Raven didn't remember her ever talking about them. Maybe something to look into later. Sure, I remember you. You're some type of big Alliance hero. The colonist continued, unaware of Revan's internal thoughts. Commander Shepard. Captain of the Normandy. The first human Spectre. Savior of the Citadel. Another human walked out from behind one of the nearby structures. This one in the same style of armor Shepard tended to wear. Her tone might have been decently pleasant, but Revan could feel the anger practically radiating in waves off of her. You are in the presence of a god, Delon. Back from the dead. The human soldier finished sarcastically. All the good people we lost and you get left behind. Figures. The colonist, Delon, said bitterly. Screw this. I'm done with you Alliance types. He waved a hand dismissively and shoved past Jacob on his way back the way he came from. Revan sighed as she watched the broken man leave. Not many civilians could handle losing people to war. Especially when they didn't think they were in one. Another flare of anger pulled Revan's attention back to the newcomer. She had heard Shepard greet her as Ash, so this must be Ashley Willems, one of the commander's old subordinates. One who apparently didn't appreciate the friendly greeting by Shepard. How have you been? That's it? Ashley asked in disbelief. You show up after 2 years and act like nothing's happened? Why didn't you contact me? Why didn't you let me know you were alive? What do you want from me, Ash? I didn't exactly have a choice. I was in some sort of coma for 2 years while I was getting put back together by Cerberus. Shepard shot back. You're with Cerberus now. Garrus, too? Revan huffed as Ashley seemed to only selectively pay attention to what Shepard said. I can't believe the reports were right. She said darkly. Reports? You mean you already knew? The Turian spoke up. Alliance intel said Cerberus could be behind the missing colonies. We got a tip that this could be the next one to get hit. And there were rumors that you weren't dead. Worse, that you were working for the enemy. I went to Anderson but he wouldn't talk. Cerberus and I want the same thing, to save our colonies, but that doesn't mean I answer to them. Shepard replied hotly. And they were the only group actually putting resources towards the problem. The Council says it's out of their jurisdiction and the Alliance obviously isn't taking it seriously if they only sent a handful of soldiers and a few defense towers to stop an entire colony from vanishing. So what am I supposed to do? Just let it keep happening and hope someone else handles it alongside the whole Reaper problem? Guilt and rage bloomed from Ashley as she got up in Shepard's face. Do you really believe that? Or is that what Cerberus wants you to think? She paused and looked almost regretful. I wanted you to be alive, I just never expected anything like this. The regretful look turned hostile. You've turned your back on everything we stood for. Revan could practically see the mental and emotional wounds she and Shepard had worked at resolving fester and rip open. Ash, you know me better than that. Shepard said weakly. You saw it yourself. The Collectors are the ones targeting human colonies. And they're working with the Reapers. I'd like to believe you, Shepard. But I don't. Trust Cerberus. And it worries me that you do. What did they do to you? Revan could feel the frustration from Garrus peak as the Turian could no longer stay out of the conversation. Damn it, Williams. You're so focused on Cerberus that you're ignoring the real threat. Do you really think Shepard or I would work with them if there was any other option? Or maybe she just refuses to see other options because she feels like she owes Cerberus. Ashley yelled. Is that it? Because they saved you? Maybe it is you, doesn't matter, I know where my loyalties lie. I'm no fan of aliens, but Cerberus has a history of being extremist. I'd never work with a group like that. I'm an Alliance soldier. It's in my blood. She finished accusingly. I'm reporting this back to the Council. I'll let them decide if they believe your story. Revan felt another surge of dark emotions from the commander, along with the fact Shepard was now one fraying thread from losing her self-control and doing something she would regret later. "Go fuck yourself, Williams," Shepard hissed. She turned on a heel and marched off, yelling for her scattered teammates to gather around and assist the remaining colonists. Garrus gave Ashley one final disappointed look before shaking his head and moving to join his commanding officer. "Something you want to say, Cerberus?" Ashley spat at Revan disdainfully when the Sith Lord remained behind. "Be silent, you mewling child," Revan commanded tonelessly, removing her helmet and shaking her head so Ashley could see her non-human characteristics. Ashley's eyes widened, at the command or Revan's appearance she didn't know, but Revan flared her presence all the same, causing Ashley to choke on whatever words she was about to say. "I didn't interfere because Shepard has a right to defend herself, but don't think for a second I will let your blatant refusal to accept the truth pass unpunished. You have managed to undo weeks of progress trying to get Shepard to move past the trauma of dying alone in the vacuum of space and then having nearly every inch of her body poured over by Cerberus scientists. If Ashley had any control of her body right now, she would have stepped back from the rage in Revan's voice, but the Sith continued to hold her in place. So let's go through this list of issues you have with the commander," the Sith said in a deceptively mild tone. "You say you blame her for not contacting you? Why would she? What have you done in the 2 years that she was dead that makes it worth reaching out to you besides the fact you were part of her crew before? Nothing. You have not made connections to help deal with the threat you know is coming, you have not trained to make sure you can face their forces, you have even allowed yourself to sit quietly as your commander's warning was shoved aside and forgotten." Revan felt the guilt stab the Alliance soldier like a knife. One she had no issues with twisting. Yet despite that, Shepard did try to contact you. She went to the Council to try and get them to see the threat once again. To find some help from the Citadel that would let her break away from the organization you condemn her for working with. When they washed their hands of the issue, she asked your Counselor Anderson about your whereabouts but was told you were on a classified mission and couldn't be reached. So no, Commander Shepard has no loyalties to Cerberus. They have experimented on her, violated her, and then forced her to work with them simply because there is no other way to deal with the aliens abducting colonies on her own. There's the Alliance, Ashley started to argue before Revan cut her off. "Yes, the Alliance," Revan drawled. "The same force that when given a tip credible enough about the threat to an entire colony they decide to respond, sends a token force and some defenses not even properly usable. The only thing special about it is the inclusion of a member of Commander Shepard's old crew. The same commander that apparently is rumored to be working for the force you think is attacking these colonies." Revan paused to give Ashley an unimpressed look. "Did you even bother to think you were sent here as anything other than bait? It clearly wasn't for your critical thinking skills." If Revan was hoping to continue making Ashley feel guilty, she was doing a rather poor job. Rage and anger had long drowned out the soldiers' other emotions along with a healthy dose of fear, but Revan didn't care. A distant part of her mind was even wondering why she was bothering with the Alliance soldier, but it was drowned out by the rest of her that wanted Ashley to know exactly how much she had pissed off the Sith Lord. "You say being Alliance is in your blood. Don't make me laugh. Shepard has managed to convince members of 4 different alien races to help defend against a threat to human colonies despite being surrounded by members of a human supremacist group while you bent under the opinions of your officers and kept quiet about a threat to the galaxy. Was it because they told you your career would be over if you didn't fall in line? You tell me who is doing a better job living up to the oaths they took when they joined the military." Revan didn't actually know for sure if the Alliance had any oaths that called its members to do their best to protect human interests, even if that meant going against orders, but it was a common enough thing among even the more warlike races back home that she was willing to bet there was something equivalent here. A bet that paid off as Ashley's jaw tensed at the accusation. "But none of that matters because we both know the real reason you were so eager to tear into your former commander," Revan hissed as she loomed over the human. Your pride simply couldn't take the commander riding to the rescue the same way she did at Eden Prime. Ashley's face paled even as Revan could sense the woman frantically denying it in her mind. You let the colony fall to an invasion and once again Commander Shepard swept through and saved the day, but this time, she wasn't some Alliance officer you could look up to. No, she was just some discredited spectre that nobody believed for 2 years and was willing to work with Cerberus. You just couldn't take that she succeeded where you failed. Again. Ashley was living up to her name. Her face was white as ash and she was frantically shaking her head, trying to deny Revan's words. Revan leaned in close to deliver the final blow. I certainly saw one soldier who turned their back on what they believed in, and it wasn't Commander Shepard. Revan released Ashley from her hold and watched dispassionately as the Alliance chief collapsed on the ground. And for a brief instant the crumpled form was overwritten by an image of a defeated Bastila looking back, face blank and battered from their final duel. Ah, so that was it. Revan mused. It seems my own issues with betrayal aren't as handled as I like to believe. What are you? Ashley's fear-stricken response shattered the illusion and Revan was staring down at the human woman once more. I am Darth Revan. She answered coldly. Shepard was the beacon trying to gently bring everyone together to face the threat to the galaxy. You refused her. Now you get to deal with me. Revan turned and left the fallen soldier where she was. She needed to talk to Shepard and see how much damage was recoverable from this force-damned situation. Oh. She found the human easily enough. Shepard hadn't exactly had the opportunity to get very far. As Revan got closer, she took the time to closely examine the feelings she could sense roiling around inside the spectre. In a way it was both better and worse than she was expecting. Shepard was not the type to break down crying in a corner. Revan was glad for that because she was not the best at comforting people like that. Unfortunately, Shepard was exactly the kind of person that would take all her emotions and shove them into a bottle and leave them there until it exploded. Revan had seen the result of that on Cullis, where that bottle started to show cracks. What do you want, Revan? Shepard demanded flatly after the Sith Lord remained nearby but didn't say anything. Revan remained silent as she internally debated the best way to go about this. Decision made, she walked up to Shepard, placed a hand on her shoulder, and gently started leading the human away. Revan, seriously, I'm not in the mood for whatever cryptic bullshit you have planned. Would you like to know a secret the Jedi have tried to deny for decades, Shepard? Revan said instead. The Spectre scowled at the evasion, but Revan felt the glimmer of interest that bloomed in her. Many of them will deny it to their dying breath, but sometimes, violence can be an excellent way to calm yourself. Revan unclipped one of her lightsabers and expertly made some adjustments on the various controls hidden on the hilt before offering one to the commander. Not one of her personal lightsabers though. No, Revan had learned several times the hard way that she could be disarmed or have her sabers destroyed and had taken to carrying a spare in a special compartment of her armor. That saber, alongside the blaster she used on Cullis, remained part of the equipment she took with her on every mission, even if they were hardly ever needed. Or used. Shepard looked at the offered weapon like it was going to bite her. No offense, she started. But I never picked up sword fighting in basic, and I kind of like having my limbs attached. Revan snorted. The blades do have a training setting, Shepard. She said dryly. We can hardly teach acolytes how to use them if they lop off a limb at the first mistake. Granted, they will still hurt like hell, but the worst injury you will receive is a small burn. If you say so. Shepard trailed off, unconvinced. Nevertheless, she took the weapon and, with some additional instruction, ignited the blade. Revan watched in amusement as Shepard stared at the glowing yellow blade with a growing expression of excitement. It was always fun seeing an acolyte with their first blade. The look of wonder was something Revan particularly enjoyed. Okay, this is freaking cool. Shepard probably didn't mean for Revan to overhear her whispered comment, so she didn't respond as she made the same adjustments to one of her own sabers. The red blade hissed to life, although instead of the blazing white core it normally had, it was a dull yellow color. She moved to an open area, away from prying eyes, and settled into a loose guard stance. Shepard followed and tried mimicking the stance to middling success. Revan could see she was sitting too far back on her heels, a habit from the long hours of practice ensuring she had a stable foundation for shooting, but made no effort to correct it. Okay, now come at me however you want. Take some time to get used to the blade and let me know when you want me to begin fighting back. Revan instructed. And before you worry about possibly hurting me, remember I've spent my entire life using this weapon, I am stronger than you, and I am wearing armor. Just let go and enjoy yourself. It was obvious Shepard still had her doubts, but after a few weak probes, she attacked Revan for real and was easily countered. Revan made sure to watch closely as she blocked, parried, dodged, and eventually counterattacked the commander. The more she sank into the fight, the more those bottled-up feelings of betrayal and anger faded into the background. Shepard was now immersing herself in the simple enjoyment of a fight. Now Revan just had to hope Jack was too tired from the fight with the Collectors to make good on her own desire for a duel so they could all get off this Force-forsaken rock before Shepard needed to deal with Ashley again.